Good evening, good evening. Welcome everyone. This is episode number 26 of the Every Day is a Story All Its Own podcast where it all began for me. I have coming back to this as I have the past 5 or 6 weeks. It has been a real treat for me to talk to colleagues, and some of those colleagues started with me when they were teenagers or in their very young 20s. Were in the theater company, took classes from me, and all that. Continued to study with me, and now have families and are out doing amazing things. A couple weeks ago, I had Robbie Justice on. It was an excellent conversation. Lots of people saw it, and tonight I have Krystle Haliotis, who is wonderful, who just is a person who shows up like Robbie, who takes advantage of every opportunity to watch her grow up in the business, as they say, to start as an actress and a singer, and move to a writer and then a director, and so on and so forth. Krystle's also going to talk about something tonight which we haven't had a chance to talk about yet, and Krystle straddles the bridge very well between the arts world and the corporate world. And she's found a way to take her arts work, her social justice passion, which we definitely share, and apply that to the corporate world to be doing amazing things at a time where, hey, it's never not needed, but this is a time where Krystle's doing the good work, sometimes under difficult circumstances. Everybody knows from watching the show, because I keep you informed. It has been a crazy week since we had Brett Hunter on with his vision of a digital community, service-based, egalitarian, that has been making the rounds at LinkedIn and so on and so forth. Some people have gone and become members of the World Community Network, which is great. That is something that you can do to battle the things that are going on. So let us get started. There's a lot of inspiring stuff to talk to Krystle about tonight, and let's get going. Okay, so here we go. Krystle Haliotis is a filmmaker, writer, and social justice advocate whose creative work explores the intersections of identity, resilience, and liberation. Her journey began over 20 years ago with Seven Stories Theater Company, formerly known as New Mystics Theater Company, where she found both her artistic voice and her foundation in community-based activism. As the founding creative director of that organization, that touches my heart to hear that. That early work, rooted in radical theater and collaborative storytelling, continues to shape how she approaches filmmaking, writing, and leadership today. Krystle's work spans stage and screen, blending personal experience with broader systemic narratives, particularly around grief, neurodivergence, and the lived realities of marginalized communities. This is probably one of the best, most inspiring bios that I've ever read. Krystle's in the green room. I hope she heard me say that. She has directed and written short films that challenge, heal, and create space for reflection. She has also led diversity and inclusion efforts within corporate and legal environments. As a neurodivergent creative, Krystle believes storytelling is not just a craft, but a tool for change and connection. And that is what we're going to be talking about tonight. Welcome to the Every Day is a Story All Its Own podcast, Krystle.
Thanks, Joey. I'm so happy to be here.
This is a little surreal and very cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
20-something years for us to be sitting here as colleagues talking about all of this totally inspiring stuff. So in the past, on the different brands of the show, I and Tanya, when she was co-host, would talk about our recollections of how we met the guest. But I am going to turn it over to you, and you tell me how we met and how this all started, and how things developed with the theater company from your perspective.
Sure, yeah. It's hard to believe, but it was just 20 years ago. I was at that time, I'm gonna say my age, but I was 19 years old, sophomore in college, and I was dating a member of the company at the time, and he brought me in. I was studying theater in college, and he thought it would be really great to get to know you and be a part of what was then New Mystics Theater Company. And so I think I auditioned, I came on board, and I learned a lot. And we worked together. We developed a show together, which became 7 Reasons to Say No. And it was just amazing. And I remember all of the breakthroughs that I had then. I have never been so challenged. I've never been you were always so incredibly open and honest with me. And I loved that, and I consider you a dear friend as well as mentor. And it's just really awesome to say, like, 20 years later, we're still connected and we still get to talk pretty much every day. And it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So thank you for all of that. Yes, you were amazing and elevated the theater company. It's always a weird plank to walk, where it's just like the Mutual Admiration Society, but you were, and you had this drive to improve and to study and to continue. So you were going after scholarships and different kinds of things. You came all the way down to West Virginia. It's like a 7-hour drive to come to the Holler, to the living room where we would have rehearsals for the Southern part of the theater company to prepare some monologues.
Yes. Yeah, I did. Particularly, now I'm trying to remember which one it was, but I'll never forget. It was such an emotional piece, and I was doing it right in the middle of the living room. And yeah, it was such a great time. It was such a, I learned so much of what I know now from those experiences. And I really attribute that to my foundation.
Awesome. Which you've taken and done amazing things. I just want to say we also did at least one short film together in the Holler. I got to play your very angry Italian father.
Yes.
who did not care for your marriage choice at all.
Exactly. Yep. And I was a young mom, and it was wild. Sometimes I think it's still on YouTube, and sometimes I'll just watch it.
Yeah, they're up there. So, okay, so let's move on though. Your transition from theater to film, because for so many audience members, so many young people, they start out in theater. They do high school theater and then college theater, and then make that transition. So what was the experience of that transition like for you? How did it happen, and what was the process?
Yeah, so I would say throughout high school, it was just theater. I was always in musicals. I was a trained vocalist. I studied voice for about 14 years. I had numerous voice teachers. I went off to go to Westminster Choir College, which is a pretty prestigious school, and learned from some really great voice teachers there. And from then on out, I really discovered my love of writing. I transferred over to Kane University to finish my bachelor's degree. And I took a screenwriting class, and I just fell in love with it. And I got to write it was such a pivotal time in my life. And I was dealing with a lot of unfortunate abusive relationships. And so a screenplay came out, which is now known as Aspersion, which is something that I wrote and directed and produced. And it's had so many iterations. I think writing, they say writing is rewriting. And so I think there are probably like 30 different versions of that screenplay, if not more. And it was workshopped, and, we cast it and everything. And it was pretty wild to see something. I think I worked on that piece for about 15 years. So,
and it's not a long piece.
No, it's not long at all. It's honestly like an 8-minute film.
Yeah.
But it was so deeply personal, and it talks about so many things that I dealt with in my life, and just different relationships, mother-daughter relationship, spouse, all those types of things. And so, I grew up a lot with that piece, and it's amazing to see just like the transformation that happened from the early stages of it to what it became. And I'm really, really proud of it.
And it was your directing debut.
It was my directing debut. That's right. I directed a few things for stage, but I've never did film before. I was brought on as a co-producer for the company at the time. And, I learned a lot just on my feet. And so, I learned a lot of directing from you as well. as well as, other people that I've worked with along the years. So I kind of took all of that and, made it what it was.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I hope, I know that's in process. I'm a big fan of the composer of that film,
Yes. Yeah.
and people should see it. It's wonderful, and we're in a complex business.
Yes. Very much so.
Lord knows. So
Yeah.
here's something. This is the first time, and I'll be interested to see what I say, if I say anything or not. But you have such a strong presence on LinkedIn, which we're live streaming to tonight, about neurodivergence.
Yes.
And as a creative, so neurodivergence and creativity, neurodivergence in the corporate world, advocating for yourself, using what I call my superpowers, which
Yeah.
which I had no understanding of until just a couple of years ago, when I
Right.
was pushed into testing. But what was your journey, your response to it, how you've grown into it, and how you use it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of funny that we're having this conversation today. I'm actually working on a neurodivergent presentation with a coworker of mine to talk about I work in corporate law. And so the conversation hasn't really been opened up too much in that area. And as I'm sure you know, law is a very perfection seeking profession, meaning, there's not a lot of room for error. And I don't think that, I have ADHD. I found out I had it when I was 35. I just had a sneaking suspicion. I realized that I was masking for a long time. I never felt like I, just like naturally fit into places. And I wondered why, I saw other people thriving in certain areas. And I was like, why am I not that organized, or why all of these things? And so I went to a psychiatric nurse, and I took the test and everything. And I found out, I do have ADHD. And it's just really, I'll be honest, I had a lot of grief at that time. I think I was like, wow, how am I finding this out at 35? This would have explained so much about my high school years, me in college. It took me a long time to get out of school. I always knew I wanted to do the arts and be in it in some way, but it really took me a long time to really find my place and where I would do well. So eventually I ended up at Kane and graduated from there. But yeah, it really, apologize, my dog. It really opened my eyes, right? And I think I really had a real deep understanding of who I am. And, as you say, like superpowers and things like that, I realized that I can think pretty quickly on my feet. And I have the power of hyperfixation. I really know how to sit down, and I can write a screenplay. I'll figure out the whole story, and then I'll go back into it. But I will actually sit and really map it all out and take the time to really turn it into a story. And so when I get an idea, like I'm just like, I'm ready to go, and I will sit down and I will write it all out. And I realized that's a strength of mine, and something that I embrace, and something that I'm really proud of. And so it was a really eye-opening experience, and it actually helped me years later seek diagnosis for my daughter as well. I was starting to see the signs, and I was like, she looks exactly, it's so funny. She's like my little mini me. She's just my twin. But I realized she had a lot of my personality tendencies and all of these things. And I'm thinking, no, I wonder. And so she got tested, and I'm so glad that, at a younger age, she can have that support and that understanding of how her mind works.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, good for you. And of course, the peanut, as I call her, is she really is your mini me, the way Joe, as she likes to be called, prefers to be called, is my mini me. And of course, Joe was the one who pushed me, said, Dad, I got I'm on the spectrum here. I'm quite neurodiverse, and the team was asking her, so like, who in your family has this? And she said, nobody that I know of. And they were like, oh yeah, somebody.
Yes.
And she said, oh my gosh, it's my dad. So she talked to other people in the family. They were less, and I was like, okay, let's do this. What the heck? It's just a test. Like, let me
Yeah.
take these tests. And I took 5 of them. And it
Wow.
was amazing. It was like my entire life fell, those games where you try to move them around so everything slots into the,
Yes. Yeah.
well, all this craziness that is me, interior, exterior, my quirks and foibles and what I call the quirky workings of my mind. All of a sudden they went into these, and I was
Right.
able to go to colleagues, to my family. A few places I used it as an apology, to go, hey, look, I wasn't really an AH. Like, here's
Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
going on. Here's my push pull between. Now, people know, just from watching over the years, that it takes a lot for me to go out into the world, go out and tour, perform, network. I have a huge passion for all of that, but I'm just as happy to get home. And it's like a
Yeah.
20/80. Is this the
Yes.
same way for you? Like, after a
Yeah.
certain level, you need to.
Absolutely. As I get older, I realize I need a lot of decompressing time. I've always called myself a bit of an extrovert introvert, in
Yeah.
that, I really do enjoy, talking to people in person, like getting dinner together, all those kinds of things. But I realize too that sometimes I just don't have the energy to do it. Right. So I'm thankful that in my role now it's hybrid. So there are days when I am just like, I am not up to being social today. I can work from home, right? And then we could just have a conversation like we are right now, and it feels like good in my own space. You know, sometimes I do, as I have to hype myself up to, if I know I'm going to be in a crowd. I realized too, as I got older too, that I actually struggle with social anxiety. I just get
Mhm.
very nervous, especially when I know there's going to be a new group of people. I had an experience like that recently where I was going to like a network event and I didn't really know anyone there. And so to start from scratch makes me nervous, to be like, you don't really know me well, but I also don't know you well. So like, I'm a big proponent too of like finding common ground with people and really starting that kind of a conversation that way.
That's amazing. Now, a couple months ago, you were working on a presentation, and I got to see the presentation, and you introduced me to a term, um, that a lot of the social anxiety, or the immense amount of pressure that we
Yes.
put on ourselves. And
Yes.
I think it's something that a lot of creatives have, right? I'm
Oh
reading
yeah.
Tales from the Script now, because I'm trying to learn Hollywood, because I'm on the
Right.
threshold, and
Yeah.
so reading a lot of screenwriters. And what is that? What is that condition?
So rejection.
Or maybe that's the wrong word. I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's called rejection sensitive dysphoria,
Yeah.
or commonly known as RSD, and it falls in between the ADHD and autism spectrum. And so, what that is when you get criticism, when someone gives you feedback, it can feel like physical pain, and something that someone might say, oh, it's not for me, you could think about it all day and be
Yeah.
like, why wasn't it for you? And what did I do wrong? And all of these things. And it actually comes a lot from having trauma in your life. And sometimes it can bring you back into that. And so I personally, I realized that I have a very high tendency to have RSD, especially in the corporate world. And so I actually went into EMDR therapy, which I think it's the most researched form of therapy there is out there, actually. And I did something where you just kind of talk about an experience and you look at this ball on the screen, with a licensed therapist, and you kind of just break it down. And then you realize that these things that you were holding on to for so long, they call it like a train moving by. And it's just like a blip in your memory rather than this like immense amount of pain. And so that's been really helpful for me. But I know everyone is wired differently. And so everyone's going to react differently. But that's what it's called, rejection sensitive dysphoria. And it is something that I'm going to be talking about when I do my presentation in a few months.
Excellent, because corporate law is a high pressure business. What we do as creatives, we field rejection and criticism and feedback day in and day out, all
Yes.
day, every day. I mean, I have so much work out in the world that people are constantly engaging with, commenting on,
I can imagine.
rating,
Yeah.
right?
Good.
Yeah, social media is an entire rating, an entire rating system. You put something up, how does it do? Um, I just want to make one comment before we move on
Sure.
about the corporate law and being slow to adopt neurodiverse, because 20 something years ago was the brilliant character of Jerry Hans Espenson on Boston Legal,
Right.
played by a very capable actor.
Hmm.
And Jerry had plenty of responsibility, and yes, he had his foibles and all, which were charming and that helped, lighten the show and all of that. But they need to go back and revisit Denny and James Spader's character and spend some time with Hans Espenson. So,
Yeah. Sounds like it.
yeah. For
No,
those of you who
that's great.
don't know, he was called Hands because he would always put his hands on his thighs. It was they're called stims.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I
Yes.
realized over the years that I have those as well. There are certain
Yes.
ways that I will twitch my nose, or like I'll scrunch my face, or I'm a nail picker, like all those different things. And I see it too on my own daughter, and then and her and it's really fascinating to see, what it is. Really, you do those things to make yourself comfortable,
Yeah.
right? It's just
Yeah.
something that and something that it's like your own little safe space, I like to call it. As long as you're not hurting anyone, there's nothing wrong with it.
No, not at all. And I call mine playing the one that I noticed the most. Rocking is another one. I'm constantly having
Yeah,
to replace my chairs, but I've been a rocker since I was a kid. And
right.
it was always like, oh, he's just got too much energy. He's got too much energy. He's a creative. Da, 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 da. The audience is probably going, well, duh, look at his energy. But I call it playing the trumpet. And
Yeah.
when I go, oh, like I'll say to Tanya, we need to wrap up at the store because I'm starting to play the trumpet.
That's
And it's
funny.
sort of like an early warning device.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So look at this. Look at us. So you mentioned the aspersions and some of your other work. And so talk about writing through grief and growth. And I just want to say there's some very dear friends of the show who have been on a bunch of times, Bill and Jackie Kuslis. And Bill is a licensed therapist, and they've written books about something called post-traumatic growth. And I
Oh,
just love that.
yeah,
That's
that's
something maybe to
beautiful.
look into. It's amazing. Some of the audience, of course, has heard of it through them. Tanya and I are going to be featured in their new book. But
Oh,
talk
awesome.
about writing through grief and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I call it kind of like an organic experience, in that sometimes the things that come out on the page, I didn't even realize that's something that I thought of, or something
Mhm.
that, I grew through, right? Like, and it's a nice perspective to kind of look back and go, okay, I thought of that way, and now I see it in another light, right? Just because of experience. I think experience is so incredibly important as an artist, and I think we get better with writing the more that we go through, and the more things that we can tap into. My dog is she has the zoomies.
She's excited. She's rooting for you. We're
Yeah,
good.
exactly. um, yeah, so yeah, and it's a really good thing. And I realize I have a lot of grief poetry. There are times when I'll just be, really in a mood, and things will come out of me out of like frustration of maybe like the current climate. Unfortunately, I realized that as of the 21st this month, my dad passed away 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And so that is something that I had to work through over the years. And I've written a lot about of that own personal grief of like losing a parent and what that's like. It's a really therapeutic experience, and something that I stress to a lot of people when they're going through a hard time, that sometimes you just need to write through it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, just your entire home shook.
I know. Yeah, she's quite excited.
That is, just tell us just briefly, because she's there and she's part of it. She was a rescue dog, right? Through the Philadelphia Eagles have a
Yes. Yeah,
program.
yeah. This is I don't know if I can get her to come up, but her name's Jazzy. She is part pit bull. She was a rescue. She was unfortunately a stray. They found her behind a hospital in Camden, New Jersey. And so they brought her over to this animal shelter. And I realized on social media that I think it was last year, the Philadelphia Eagles were doing so well. And where I live, it's like Eagles country. Like everybody's an Eagles fan over here. The link is like 20 minutes from me. And my fiance is a diehard fan. So we are very, very into the Eagles. And so, yeah, the Eagles were paying for adoption fees. And so we went, and it was really great. We were so excited. I've wanted a dog for I haven't had one in 20 years. And so I've always loved animals. I have 2 guinea pigs as well. And they're
Oh,
a lot of fun. They're noisy, actually. And we actually have one named Saquon, after Saquon Barkley of the Eagles.
nice.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. But yeah, so the Eagles, they paid for the adoption fees. We were featured on 6 ABC News.
That's
And
right.
that was really cool. And my daughter got to, kind of meet the dogs and fall in love with them. And, Jazzy came up to me and she gave me a kiss on my face. And I was like, that's it. You're coming home with us. And so
Yeah,
she's been with us for 6 months.
that is awesome. 3 years ago on the property, I was out at the fire pit. It was the middle of winter, and up comes this just beat up, scrawny little, and that was Rosie. That is Jeremy's, and he rescued. She was abandoned. She was
Yeah.
bred out, which is the thing in
Yeah.
my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
She
Unfortunately,
was
not my
bred
list.
out and cast out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Rosie's just amazing. So,
Yeah.
folks, I bring this up, and I spent a little time on this because pitties have a bad reputation.
They do. They absolutely
And
do.
Rosie is awesome. I know your sweetheart is awesome. And these are dogs that need to be rescued,
They do.
loved. That's what they just need. They can be, I don't know if your sweetheart is or not, but Rosie is super, super neurotic. So we don't always get on because I worry about those kinds of things. So when Jeremy goes away and we watch Rosie, she just sits and stares out the window. If it's 3 days, she just, and when she's ready to go home, she gives him a look. So anyway, it's a labor of
That's
love.
funny.
And
Yeah. That's so special, though.
yeah, yeah, I love to watch it. And now they have a little Rosie and Daisy. And Daisy is like a 6-month-old beagle. And I was like, you are out of your mind. Turns out they were. So anyway, let's keep moving. Creative leadership and community building. We are building a theme here.
Yeah. Yeah. So creative build. So with that, a lot of my filmmaking actually led me to a really interesting role. A couple years ago, I ran a racial justice initiative at a huge law firm. And so I was the first person out of, there's like 4,000 employees. I was the first person to actually full-time work in it and project manage it. And so we had 400 volunteers and we had 12 different working groups. So everything from access to education to voting rights and engagement, I was a part of it. And so that was an incredible learning experience. And I got to meet so many people. And we put together this fundraiser to help 20 different global nonprofits that work on racial justice and, serve marginalized communities and help particularly really children read. So we had over 2,000 books donated and we raised over $46,000 that was dispersed to all these different organizations from everywhere to like Abu Dhabi to, Princeton, New Jersey. And it was really amazing. I got to meet and work with so many really giving and lovely people through that.
God bless you. We were trying to raise up citizen artists, and man, you're the poster child for what we were trying to do, and that is amazing. Because when you give the gift of literacy, that is a key that unlocks countless doors. That is amazing. I want to backtrack just a little before
Sure.
we move on. When you were talking about your writing process, you said that things come up that you didn't even know, and they give you new perspectives. I believe that's so new perspectives and broad perspectives in that's what we share with the audience. That is ingrained in the piece. When you watch Aspersions, it's not like, oh, this is a specific character's point of view and everyone else is totally evil. And that was never our approach to the theater company. The
Right.
devised theater, the collaborative storytelling. Is that I would guess that you are conscious of that, and that is a point of pride for you, that you tell well-rounded stories, that
Yes.
it's not echo chamber, like I'm preaching to the choir on this one and pushing this character home who's
Right.
just my mouthpiece, but that you're getting people to say, this is complex stuff, and we would all benefit from understanding what's at work here.
Right. Yeah. So I look at it this way. Everyone's incredibly complex as people. And so I think everyone deserves a chance to kind of explain the inner workings of how they work, how their brain works. Right. So when I wrote Aspersion, I was thinking, so real quickly, it's a story about a young woman who finds herself in a really abusive relationship and talks to her mom about it and kind of realizes that she's kind of in this circle of abuse. And it actually happens a lot in real life where, children who have abusive parents can go on to an abusive, like, marriage or, a relationship. And so she kind of realizes it and she becomes the cycle breaker.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that in that, she has her own objective and her fiance at that time has his own objective. And you sooner realize that he too had an abusive situation. And you'll see just with people, whatever it is that happens in your life, you can make a decision and you can either go one way or you can go another. Right? There's sometimes they say, hurt people, or, abused person could abuse others. Or there are people who decide that, hey, I don't want to be this. I don't want to live in this. And they're the ones that get out of it. And they're the ones that go to therapy. And they're the ones that get the help and get the support group and whatever it is on their own spiritual journey. And so I believe that everyone, every character that I write deserves to have a voice. And it's up to the audience to really, what do you see in that person? And what do you see in that person? I think that's what makes art. And I think that's what makes film so interesting. I am a big fan of the show Barry. It was Bill Hader.
Yeah.
And I thought that show was so, my fiance Vinny and I, we loved it because these are characters you don't usually see on TV. And so, but everyone, you really realize that you really weren't rooting for anyone on the show. You're like, these are all really flawed people who have a lot of narcissistic tendencies, very hurtful. They manipulate a lot of situations, and but it's really still a very interesting watch, right? And you get to really see, oh, why does that person think like that? Why does that person think like that? Why did they do that? And you realize a lot of times it's their background, or it's just, you don't know what you don't know until you're in it.
Yeah. That's a great point. Immediately what comes to mind is Wes Anderson's Royal Tannenbaums.
Yeah.
I hate every single one of them.
Right.
I despise every single one of them. And how we align ourselves or spend time with people that either help elevate us or keep us right where we are,
Exactly.
reinforce. And
That's
I'm getting older, I am noticing that. That's how I look at relationships, including my own. Like, is this pushing both of us forward? Which doesn't mean that it can't be messy. It can't mean that's, but this kind of stuckness where there's two people together or a group and they're just reinforcing. And once you take one of those people out of the group and go like, hey, what's going on with you? Or let me tell you what's going on with me and how my life is looking right now. You see this desire that they have to
Yeah.
go someplace else. And that's such the core, right? That's the gap in storytelling. That's the magic place. Here's
Yeah.
where I am. Here's where I want to be. And
Absolutely.
I just watched them like a powerful magnet is turned on. The minute that you let go of them, so to speak, they get swoosh right back in. Where you
Yeah.
saw these glimmers of what could happen in the gap in the hero's journey, right? They can
Yeah.
what would happen when they emerge from the cave and go through the. But initiation is really, really kind of scary, which takes us to, there's so much talk, and I believe rightfully so. She's a female writer. Right now, Ryan Coogler is doing amazing work, or Jordan Peele, his
Yeah.
work. And
Right.
the voice is very, very strong. Inarritu, Alexandra Inarritu, who I absolutely love. I watched The Revenant again last night.
Mm.
Because of Mark L. Smith, who wrote American Primeval. There's this interesting trend. So in horror, Ryan Coogler, Jordan Peele are going, you know what the worst horror is in America? Racism. Racism is
Mm.
the monster.
Yeah.
Racism is the
Yeah.
vampire. Racism. And it works because it works. Like there's no incredulity. Like you go, nah, that doesn't work. You're just pushing an agenda. And I'm super, super sensitive to agenda.
Right.
But there is this trend too now about looking at the birth of this country and manifest destiny and these kinds of things and going, everyone was right in their own little space. And land becomes that thing that everyone fights over. And Mark L.
Right.
Smith, he's got a new show on Netflix debuting tonight. That's my weekend watch. But you, you're a female writer, you're a woman writer, and we know this. And how much is that part of what you do? I have thoughts about myself, which is weird because who talks about old straight white guys, like, oh yeah, of course they write everything. Not necessarily true.
Yeah.
I have my own obsessions from my point of view, but
Sure.
yeah, sorry, that was very roundabout. I apologize. We're
It's okay.
doing good on time, and I love having these creative conversations
Yeah. No,
with
I do
people I
too.
admire.
Yeah.
So how much does that play a role in your life? That sort of.
Yeah. So I would say definitely more so now in my own life than it did. Right. There was a time in my life where I wouldn't say I was ashamed being a woman, but I wasn't very proud of it at that time when I was younger. I found my voice much later in life and my own power and my own strength and, the things that I will settle for versus what I will not. And so that was a big, huge journey for me in my life. And so now I feel like I write with a sense of pride as a female, and I have a female's perspective, and that's what it is. And that's, but I do like to, think in other voices. And, obviously I can't write from a Black man's perspective or anything like that. That's not, I would not feel confident doing that or anything like that. But, I try to, write as much as I can. I'm thinking particularly about, and I think you were a part of it. I wrote this like one act play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
That
glad you brought that up because I was going to.
Yeah, where you played the dad, and it was like Christmas, and they wound up. It was like set in 1997 in Poughkeepsie, New York, and the daughter is like this, this actor who is struggling financially, and the dad is as well, and they decide that they're going to hold someone up for ransom, and it's just like it's this very silly but fun one act that I wrote, and that was such a fun experience for me to just kind of write something that I've always kind of wanted to write. Like, I enjoy tapping into that side of myself, and just like the zany, and I kind of looked at it as, oh my gosh, now I'm going to blank on his name. Durang.
Oh
Durang
yeah,
did a
Christopher
lot of
Durang.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher Durang. And so that was a lot of my theater upbringing, and I loved those kinds of pieces, and they were just so outlandish. And so that was a lot of fun for me to write from that kind of perspective. And it did, it did well, and I got a lot of good feedback on it. I even had someone, which was a compliment that I carry with me, and he was like, "You should really write for TV." He's like, "You have a voice for it." And I was like, "This is great. Like, that's what you want." I would love to. And so, yeah, that was a really, really fun experience, and getting to do that live and to work with you in that way. And yeah, those was a lot of fun.
That was fun. So just to give folks context, I believe this is when we were all staying home and
Yeah.
needing to get creative to keep
Yes.
our art alive, and we were all kind of living on, and but it was a wonderful opportunity to maybe do things. So I got to work with all these. Again, I got to work with Jeremy, which was fun. We hadn't worked
Yeah,
together in
that's right.
years. Um, but Ellen was terrific, and the girl who played my daughter was
Andrea.
sensational. That was a fun time. Everybody kind of came with an understanding of it, wanted to do justice to it, and that was super fun. So thank you for inviting me to be part of
Yeah,
that.
of course. Yeah, that was great. I look back at that really fondly, and it's something that I want to keep working on and improving.
Cool. Yeah, it is fun, and I see why they would say that. It did have a sitcom-y, it had that pacing, it had the, jokes that then you revisit 10 minutes
Yeah,
later, which was
exactly.
always Friends did that
Yes,
so
exactly.
well.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like, "Oh, I thought that was a throwaway." No, that was like a massive hook to get the
Yeah, they're
tuna.
setting you up. It's a, what do they
Yeah.
call it? Like the 1-2?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Really, really good stuff.
thank you.
Um, so let's talk about now bridging. You talked about it a little, your role in corporate law, but talk about now how you got into that, how you got drawn into it, and where it's evolving to now for you,
Sure.
because it's exciting, I think.
Yeah, yeah, thanks.
You're
Yeah, so
welcome.
I really do love what I do, and I think it's so great to get to be a voice in that space, and to propose things. In the last year, some of the coolest things that I got to put together. In February, we did an event, which is something you would not think of in corporate law. It was hip hop and Black culture. And so we brought in a scholar from Temple University, it's a big Philadelphia school, to come into the firm, who has written different like books, and is a well-known voice in that space, writes for a bunch of publications. And so he came in and gave a very intellectual viewpoint on hip hop, and just like the word poetry of it all, and just who started the first like hip hop, like who's the first hip hop group to where like we're at with like Kendrick Lamar, who's a great lyricist. And
Yeah.
so it was really, really fascinating. We had like over 100 people attend, and it was really awesome. And it was great to see people from all like walks of life and backgrounds, and at the firm, just come and watch. And then we also did another one on it's called Beyond K-pop and Squid Game, Korean culture, the global impact of Korean culture. Again, we brought in a professor who was a well-known Korean teacher. And so she came in and spoke about Korean beauty. She talked about Korean film, Korean drama. We had a Korean lunch, and it was really cool. And I love those culture moments, and I really truly believe that we can learn from everyone. And and what is it that someone's upbringing, like what is it that they carry into later in life, and that was just a really, really cool experience. And so those are the types of things we're working on. And again, I'm eventually going to be doing something on neurodivergence, because I saw a need for that as well in the corporate law space. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm really proud to, and honored that, I get to be a voice. It's something I talk a lot about on LinkedIn. And I
Yep.
think it's something that's really important. You don't know that some people are really deeply struggling. And, sometimes you just need to bring levity to a situation, and you need to, provide them some grace and some understanding. And it's always good. People just want to be heard. They want to be
Yes.
heard. And you think about everyone, and it's like their deepest, some of their deepest desires is just to be heard. Just like, let me voice out my perspective and the things that I know, so that maybe you can get a better understanding. And, we're really not as, there's beauty in diversity, but I also believe that we have a lot as people, we have a lot in common too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you were talking about, that need for common ground. That's why I truly believe, and I did not coin the phrase, but they are superpowers. Once you understand them and you can honor them, and you know what your needs and limitations are, and you can express those to other people.
Exactly.
Right? We first started to hear that 10 or 15 years ago in the college testing space.
Right.
Accommodations.
Yes.
We
Yes.
all need to be accommodated. Here's a for instance. My wife of 27 years, who I love dearly, an accommodation is don't talk to her before she's had at least 1 cup of coffee.
I got it.
That's an accommodation. I mean, it's as
Yeah,
simple as that, respecting someone else's needs rather than
absolutely.
criticizing them,
Sure.
judging them.
Yeah,
You know, maybe you don't belong here. No, actually, I do belong here. I just need a little bit of accommodation, which would probably
exactly.
make everybody else better.
I agree.
Yeah, so very cool. I liked what you said very, very much, because now we get to we've gone through that core material of who you are. So now we get to talk about some cool things that I'd like to talk about, which I talk about in my solo shows and my creative communications, and that's networking, the art of showing up, and when I was talking about work for hire, a key is people really do want to be listened to. They
Yes,
want to be heard. And if you
absolutely.
can do that, that puts you ahead of a large portion of the group. It really does. So as a neurodivergent person, someone who who has RSD, and it's hard to put yourself out there and then be rejected or criticized, or
Yeah.
even if it's well meaning. So how do you navigate the networking space, because you do it often and you do it well and you keep at it? So what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I think it's just a matter of really showing up, and I think it comes from a quiet confidence in yourself, and to know, hey, I do belong here. I do have a voice. I'm not going to push my agenda or anything like that on you, but I do want to be heard, right? Like, and that's it. We all have that desire, and so, only I would say in the last couple of months, I've really grown my LinkedIn network just by connecting with people from like all different types of roles. And I reach out to them, and I kind of, get to know them. And it's been a really great, it's just been really great to get to meet new people. And I think my confidence grows the more that I meet people and I see how friendly they are. And I kind of like that anxiety of it a little bit kind of goes down. A lot of
Mhm.
times people just want to help. A lot of times people just want to be friendly. A lot of times people are naturally curious, and they want to get to know other people. And so I try to remind myself of those things when I go into those spaces. If I go to a network event, or if I'm reaching out to someone new, I've just made a lot of really cool global connections just by personally just getting to know people, and just asking them what drives them, and who they are.
I love it. I hope people are taking notes. This is important. This is super, super, super important. What I'm hearing is an antidote for cynicism, right? There's so much cynicism. I mean, you're in the corporate world, which I
Yeah.
left a very, very, very long time ago,
Yeah.
a very, very long time ago, and I've been very lucky to make my living under my my own terms for a very long time, almost 30 years.
Well,
So more than half my life I kind of been doing it under my own terms. But that said, um like, how do I want to ask this to make it of the most value for the audience? Oh geez, I apologize. I just that no, that was wonderful. That was wonderful to hear, because this is such, let's start here and see if we
Sure.
can kind of get into it from a different entrance. I'm gonna start playing the trumpet here. Um uh oh my gosh, Krystle, I apologize.
It's okay.
I got inspired, and folks, see you're starting to see this doesn't happen that often. I think I'm a little nervous trying to do right by you.
Oh,
Um so uh okay. I apologize.
it's okay.
I am blanking out. I am having a hard time here. Uh the showing up part.
Yeah.
Oof. Let's unpack that a little for you. First of all, your definition of showing up. What is your definition of showing? What does it mean when somebody shows up?
I've always said that it means doing the work, right? And showing up means, maybe you have some uncertainties and maybe you're nervous, but you kind of squash them a little bit and you find the value of the situation that you're in. And you're like, I'm going to make the best of this and I'm going to learn from people and I'm going to, you know, be a voice and also provide support. I think that's what's so important about showing up in any situation is to be a supportive person. I think the world really desires that and really needs that. I think a lot of people just, again, I'm going to bring it back, but people want to be heard. And I think that's really a big part of showing up is like, are you going to listen? And what are you going to take away from this? And is this going to be used for good?
Right. There you go. So as I've watched you on your journey, as I've watched you grow into yourself in a very palpable way, in a very impressive way, and you alluded to all of that, and I just wanted to acknowledge and honor that, because that is what I have seen. I have also seen that your work as a creative has made you very desirable in the corporate world. Has that been your experience? Because my watching from the outside and sharing in your journey vicariously, that's
Yeah.
what I've seen.
Yeah. It's actually it's been great. When I really think about it, of course I have had my frustrations over the years, but when I think about it, that's like really the first thing people have said to me. They go, wow, you're creative. And I'm like, is that a rare thing? But when you realize in the corporate world, a lot of times there's standards and there's different ways. So, what I love right now is my current boss, he'll tell me like be as creative as you want, and then sometimes you can get, and then it's like maybe dial it back just a little bit,
Yeah,
but like it allows me to play, and it allows me, like, I think I found my new a new love of mine is Canva, which I think you're familiar with as well. But
absolutely.
there's so much creativity allowed in that space, and I just love it. I get to put together, these really neat PowerPoints and trainings and things like that we do in inclusion that just like really fills my heart. Like, I'm someone who really loves color. I love vibrancy. I love bringing that, and I love bringing that into the corporate world. Like I have like a very bright pink blazer that I'll wear, and it's not something like most of the time you see anyone in the corporate space wearing.
Yeah.
But like I don't know, I kind of like to give that visual cue of like, it just brings joy. And I think that's important in the world, is to be a person that really strives to bring joy to others.
And that's why you're there. You're not there to be gray pinstripe flannel suit.
No.
You're there to be the person who, because when I was in college and getting out of college in 1990, man, corporations were so excited. Then the recession hit right when I got out of school, but I had this amazing liberal arts education. I mean, I went to the place where I went. That was one of the reasons. I was like I was a big surprise to the audience, I'm sure. I was one course away from a minor in political science.
Mm.
being a writing and theater double major who would have minored but took anthropology courses and sociology courses
Yeah,
and
that's it.
women's studies courses, all this kind of stuff. And corporations at that time had a little bit of money before that recession hit, and they
Yeah.
were really looking for and recruiting that. It's nice to see that, at least in your situations, that is happening, to go, wait a minute, this is a skill set that can be beneficial with people who, I mean, law has so many strictures, right? It's
Oh,
all
yeah.
procedure, it's
Yes.
all precedent and procedure. So out of the box thinking, other than your celebrity corporate lawyers that we see on TV,
Right.
representing rich people who are characters, that is not by and large what is going on. So that's wonderful to see. When I did a show a couple weeks ago about showing up, I was talking about the fact that I was invited to sit on so many boards,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
I was a creative. And then
Right.
you show up at the meetings and you start wearing your pink blazer to the meeting, so to speak, and you start thinking like a creative, starting to look at gaps and all that. And suddenly they're going, who is this guy and why did we invite them? And you get a lot of, we've always done it this way, or
Mhm.
we've tried that before and it's never worked out. And I said it on the show, I'll say it again, it's not from a place of ego, but I'd love your thoughts on this. You've never had me here before, so
Yeah,
it's not going to turn out exactly the same. It may not be a
exactly.
huge success, but is that part of your approach as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm like, I come from and this is what fascinates a lot of people, especially in the corporate world, is when I tell them that I'm a filmmaker
Mhm.
and that I write, they're just like, oh, like there's so much more to and it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
like I'm a full person, right? I have a lot of things that I want to do, and I really love life and learning and just learning from people. I just find them incredibly fascinating, and so I bring that into the corporate world, and that's something that I am proud to carry. And I love having. There's been so many wonderful conversations that I've had just by opening up on LinkedIn from my own coworkers. Obviously I'm not going to name anything, but like it's been really eye-opening, and I'm like, wow, really, I guess people do need to hear this, right? They need to hear like there's nothing wrong with you. You're just wired a little different, like wired differently, and that's it. And we all have different ways to cope. We have all different ways that we function, and what works for one person's not going to work necessarily for another. And so why don't we just accept that, and really find people where they're at, and like bringing up accommodations. Like sometimes people, especially if you're doing like an exam, you might need a little bit longer time. Does not mean that you don't know the material,
Yeah.
right? It does not mean that you didn't study just as hard as the person next to you. It just means that your brain works differently, and maybe you take a little bit longer time on the open-ended question.
Yeah. Yeah, amen. And it doesn't mean that you're getting an unfair advantage, right? It's
Right.
it's about equity, right?
Yeah.
Equity of opportunity. I don't want to get too political here, but it's kind
Yeah.
of what you and I do.
Yeah.
Um,
Say the least.
that diversity has become, for a certain agenda, it's become an ugly word. But when you have diversity, you don't have echo chambers, right?
Mhm.
It's the anti-echo chamber. So by very pointedly, like I was watching, I have some friends, of course, who are deeply involved with NPR and PBS. Of course I would.
Yeah.
Of course I have people in that world. And
Sure.
to hear the press secretary, I guess that's what they say, we have wasted all of this money. Like, for instance, NPR and PBS. No, that's not a waste of money. That's
No.
divergent viewpoints, and that's why you don't like it. So yeah, it's very interesting. Um,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, this is incredibly inspiring, and that's why we're
Yeah.
in contact every day, because you are part of my daily inspiration. We typically connect pretty early in the morning, which
Yeah.
is nice. Gets the day off to a good start. It was
Yeah.
interesting something you said, because let's dance with this a little between corporate and or what creatives do and how it applies to everybody else. Because
Yeah.
Tanya is a psychic medium. She says everybody was born with this. I'm not special. It's just a matter of cultivation. Same thing with creativity. There's
Mhm.
not a person who out there now, maybe it's gotten squashed, hammered, drilled, banged,
Sure.
mashed out of them, and that's tragic when I come across a person like that.
Yeah.
um but you were talking about your boss where he's like, just go for it. And if we have to dial it back, but in that gap between just go for it and the revision time, right? The rewrite time, the dialing back time,
Yeah.
you are playing, as you said, which is wonderful. That's exactly what we do as directors. You do not want an actor who you have to say, dial it up. Can you give me more? I need more.
Yeah.
That is a nightmare. That's a
It is.
nightmare. But to
Absolutely.
go, that was amazing, but for the scale or the context of the
Yes.
piece, or
Yes.
for your scene partner, or what I'm really trying to go for here, which is subtle and not a sledgehammer, if
Yeah.
you could just bring that back just a touch, if you could internalize it a little, make it a little less figurative, whatever it is. So I
Sure.
was excited that you said that, because that was just another point of why folks like your presence in the corporate world is super, super important. And I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. I
You're
appreciate that.
welcome. So we've reached an hour. We've covered a lot of territory. My quirky workings of my mind totally went kablooey, because I was going, whoa, how do I do this? And it took me a little bit. So thank you for your patience.
Of course.
And for the audience, they saw me in action. I actually haven't done that live on the show in a really long time, where
Okay.
I'm trying to think of like some kind of meta thing. And
Yeah.
that's where I always, like, I'm so conscious of meta micro.
Mhm.
That's and I had to take it back. I had to take it back micro. So anyway, thank you for your patience and indulgence. What do you want to leave the audience with? Inspiring creatives who would like to have a foot in the corporate world. People, you said an interesting thing early on. You said, I went to Westminster, super, super prestigious, and it absolutely is. But then I went to Keene. So watching you over the past 20 years, when it is time for Krystle to make a left-hand turn, if it's time for Krystle to make a change, you do it. You
Yes.
do it. You just do it, and you say, I'm not, this doesn't serve me. That's what I hear you say, although there are different versions. This doesn't
Yeah.
serve me, so I am not doing it anymore. I'm putting everyone on notice who needs to be put on notice.
Yeah.
And then I'm moving forward and they can deal with it. So what is your advice to the aspiring, to the expanding?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think something that from my own experience, personally carried with me is, you know, just do it. As long as, again, as long as you're not hurting someone, like, there is no harm in trying something and going, okay, that didn't work out necessarily as I hoped to, but what did I get out of it? And did I learn something that I can carry into my next course of action? And I think that's how we grow. I think that's how, we become better writers, become better actors, we become better directors. It's really experience. So don't be afraid to have the experience. Don't be afraid to say, you know, I know when I took that job years ago in racial justice, I was like, can I really do this? Like, am I really qualified for this? And so what I did is I actually wrote to the two highest people at the firm and I advocated for myself. And that was really scary, really scary. And I thought, oh no, this is it. Like, I'm going to get fired. I don't know. Like, I had these ideas, but I realized that no, and they embraced it and they're like, yeah, no, go for it, and we'll support, and they were really, really kind and supportive. And so you really don't always necessarily know what people are thinking until you say something. So just, like, again, just do it. Just go for it. Take that little step, and you feel like if you're not necessarily ready, there's no shame in taking a step back.
That is amazing. I know you had a recent experience. You were talking about advocating for yourself, and I was witness to it. You advocated for yourself, and the person had no idea what to do with it,
Yeah.
and that was a red flag for you. And you said, "I think we're I think we're done.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
no point in moving forward. And that was a total act of bravery to say, yeah, this isn't a good, because we stay at the rodeo. We stay at the rodeo way too long sometimes,
We do.
because of the work or the money or the
Yes.
opportunity or the
Yep.
optics, right? And
Yeah,
we do it professionally and we do it personally.
absolutely.
But that was again inspiring to watch you go, you know what? It's clear that there's, and you didn't use these words, but there's a clear that we're not vibing.
Exactly.
And if we're not vibing now, we're not going to be vibing in 6 months, and
Yeah.
this is going to be bad. So bless you.
Thank
And
you.
then the recognition set in where they kind of, but I didn't mean, but no, you did, and it's okay. Like
Yeah,
that's, I think,
exactly.
yeah. So I'm learning from you every day as you're
Thank you.
going through your journey.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I couldn't believe actually in that moment where I was like, you're not the kind of leader I want to learn from.
Yeah.
That's it. And I was like, wow, I actually said that, and that I was really, really proud of myself. I really was, and I felt in my own like feminist power, like in a way, like I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to be talked down to, and you do not have the power to talk down to me. I'm
Yeah.
not going to allow it. I've allowed way too many people in my life to do that, and I'm not doing it anymore. So this is what I want to teach my daughter, and this is what I want her to carry on in her life, to know that she is worthy and she is able to do anything that she sets out to do.
Yeah. With her recently identified superpowers.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
she's in good hands. There's one last thing I want to ask you about.
Sure.
It's coming up constantly. It's a whole conversation into itself, but just quickly, I am seeing this toxic managerial, toxic entrepreneurship. I don't know if everybody thinks they're Elon Musk or what the deal is, but I am encountering this. I had a very, very bad experience of it a couple years ago in a consulting gig that I had,
Mm,
where it's this, because I'm so old. Lee Iacocca in the 80s, right? Chrysler Corporation and all, invest in your people, education, promote from within. Then there was this other dude, Jack Welch. Jack Welch, I believe, was at GE, and Jack
mhm.
Welch would fire at the end of every year 10% of his managerial staff.
Ugh.
So everybody's kind of right. You get that? Um, uh, they're kind of working on a bell curve, right? Like
Yeah.
only it's like these programs that some of my not colleagues, fellow students, we weren't colleagues at the time, went to these BFA programs where I'm old enough where they would cut you.
Yeah.
Let me say that to the people who are younger. You would pay your money
Ugh.
to go freshman year and you might get cut. You
Yeah.
would go sophomore year and you might get cut. And these BFA programs are so insular in what they're teaching and narrow. Like
Yes.
this is a fifth generation Sanford Meisner. So that's all
Right.
we teach. So
Yeah.
now this poor person has wasted all this money, has
Ugh.
debt, has the ugly mark of being cut from a program, and now they have to go to another program. That's what like this Jack Welch was doing. And
Yeah.
I see so many of this Jack Welch disrespectful, like this dude that you encountered, where like this idea of what it means to be a manager is way the heck off. But
Yeah.
you live it every day. Are you seeing this or am I making it up?
Um, I'm I'm happy to say I'm not seeing it too much.
Cool.
Honestly, I'm really grateful that, I work with really kind, giving people, but I have seen it over the years, right? And I've seen these people who carry a lot of ego and a lot of arrogance. And I also, I like to say, like, who hurt you?
Yeah.
Like, why are you so angry, but I realized again, these people at the same time, they too want to be heard, and maybe they don't have the greatest mannerisms and the way that their bedside table manner, I guess the expression is, um to kind of like, talk to people. But again, I hope that, over the years they soon realize, like, humility is actually a really beautiful thing, and it's okay to walk humbly, and it's okay to learn from other people. You don't know everything. You know, we don't know everything, right? There are so many unanswered questions in the world. And if we stay open and we stay curious, like those answers will slowly come together. And so we have to allow ourselves, you know, to be that. And that's something that, you know, I carry in my own life and something that I'm trying to teach my daughter. You know, you can learn from everybody. So, you know, don't think that, you know, you're better than anyone else. You know, you're not. It's straight up, you know, it sounds blunt, but like, you know, I want her to be confident, but I also don't want her to think like, oh, I'm better than you.
Folks, that was an amazing closing monologue. One of the best ever on this show. And that's what we're leaving you with. So I will see you next week. Elaine Latronic doing the good work with Arch Judaica out of Chicago. Jewish stories, keeping them alive, celebrating them at a time. Again, I'm really getting tired of saying at a time when it's needed. All of this is needed. If you're doing good work, it's needed. And we need more of it. So that's next week. Krystle, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And folks, we'll see you next week. Okay.
That was
Hold
awesome.
on. We are still, nope, we are still the end stream.